Hello everybody, Flyaway Jay here and welcome to another flight on my Walker Air Transport Nordics tour. This is flight 25 of 50, which will take us halfway on the Nordics tour. Today we'll be taking off from Floro Airport, Echo November, Foxtrot Lima, where as usual on this trip we had to deal with some high winds, gusts, bad visibility and a tricky landing upon arrival. Today we're going to be flying the Diamond DA62 and heading north up the coast of Norway, landing at Ørsta-Volda Airport, Echo November Oscar Lima, in the village of Hovden in Norway. Judging by the weather, it's going to be another interesting flight. Our flight today is going to be carrying myself as the crew with 6 passengers, and we'll be taking on board 162 kilograms of fuel. Our takeoff weight today is going to be 2,185 kilograms, which is about 115 kilograms less than the max takeoff weight for the Diamond DA62. Our flight, as planned, will be covering a distance of 111 nautical miles, cruising at around 170 or 80 knots airspeed. Our initial cruise altitude will be 9,500 feet above mean sea level, and we'll be flying with live weather, and I'll also be in observer mode on VATSIM, so hopefully we can see and hear some other traffic. As you can see on the screen in the top left, there is in fact other traffic currently cruising up overhead. As it turns out, as usual, the winter weather in Norway is not great for touring, so we may be stuck in some clouds on this fast and high trip to Ørsta-Volda Airport. Conditions today, as you can hear, are heavy winds blowing 140 degrees at 17 knots. QNH is 09087. Current temperature is 7 degrees centigrade or just under 45 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll be taking off on runway 07 at Floro and landing on runway 06 at Ørsta-Volda. I will again be using FS Realistic Pro and Navigraph, both of which I purchased recently, and I must say both of these add-ons add immense value to your flight simulation experience, and I will definitely suggest that you check them out. If however there's any add-ons you would like to see me use on my flight, drop a comment below and I'll be happy to check them out. If you like my videos and would like to support the channel, please like and subscribe. Every like and every subscription is greatly appreciated. As always, if you'd ever like to join me on a flight, send me a message and let's fly. I'd be glad to share the virtual skies with you. We're here to learn, to have fun, and to share the joy of aviation, so feel free to pop me a question in the comments and I'll try my best to answer. But without further ado, let's jump in the cockpit and come fly with me. Alright, welcome aboard everyone. I'm just going to turn on my headlamp for now, so we can see a little bit better in the cockpit while everything is still cold and dark. What we need to do now is bring out the checklist and go through the startup procedure to ensure that we get this aircraft set up perfectly for a good quick flight across to Echo November Oscar Lima. So what that means is we need to check the parking brake. Parking brake is this lever over here. Forward is release, down is set. You need to verify that the landing gear is down. The auxiliary pumps, both of them are in the off position, which they definitely are. The auxiliary power switch is located here up on the roof. This has to be in the off position. Fuel selectors need to be on. These are both on with the safety guards closed. In order to turn the aircraft off, you would turn the safety guard open and slide it into the completely off position. Power levers have to be in the full back position or idle position. Pitot heat needs to be off. That's this over here. Avionics master must be in the off position. Electronics master off. Fuel pumps, both of them need to be in the off position. That's this one here on the right and this one here on the left. Engine masters must both be in the off position. Fuel is as loaded. Passengers and cargo as we've loaded. Cockpit pre-flight is complete. What we need to do now is start with the cockpit preparation. So with that, we check the alternators. So the alternators are... Where are the alternators again? Alternators here should both be in the on position. So there we go. The VOTA switches need to be in the auto position. All light switches need to be in the off position. Off, 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 off. The ELT needs to be armed, which is over here. That is in the armed position. Lap selector up. Electric masters can now come on. And with that, some of the systems start powering up and you can hear some noises. Cockpit lights at this stage. I will turn on the floodlight just to brighten things up a little bit for me. Instrument light is fine. I can at this stage turn off my headlamp. Ice lights. I will do the test. We've got the ice lights working. All good. You can see here the wind gusting at roughly 20 knots, which is not ideal. Light controls need to be free and correct. All the way back, all the way forward, right and left. Light controls are free and correct. Flaps, let's test the travel. So we're going to go one stage at a time. Stage 1, and then in the landing position. So we can actually verify on the outside that they are both in the down position, and then just one stage at a time back into the up position. That's all checked, no issues there. We're going to test the gear warning and fire.
Check gear.
No problems there. Just turn the G1000 on. That's come alive. Check the engine parameters. Not running. Oil temperatures in the red. Oil pressures no pressure yet. Coolant temperatures very low. Fuel temperature seems fine, and the fuel quantity is as planned. At this stage, we quickly have a look at the power levers and verify that they're in the idle position. From a radio's perspective, what we're going to quickly do is set up our route. So from a route perspective, we are going to Echo November. Echo November. Oscar. Zoom in here so we can see a bit better. We can remember Oscar and Lima. And correction, Oscar Victor. Ørsta-Volda and Hovden. That's checked. We'll add that, and then set the GPS, the nav to GPS mode. Because we're flying in some mountainous terrain, we'll just set the terrain mode on the second display to the relative terrain mode. Okay, flight plan is set up. So from an altitude perspective, we will be, what I'm going to do actually, I'm not going to cruise as high as we initially thought we would. So I'm going to say initial cruise altitude is going to be, let's make that 6,500 feet, and we'll just kind of see how we go in respect of the terrain. Vertical speed will set to initially 800, correction, 1,000 foot per minute, just to get us off the up and out of this area. We'll check for what our VY is at this stage. It's 89 knots, so we'll likely be a bit higher than VY. Okay, at this stage, what we can do is get the engine started. So, need to check the propeller area is clear. Definitely clear. And let's get the left engine started first. So with that, the engine master goes on. And because this is a full FADEC engine, we just pretty much hit the start button and watch the engine come alive. And there we have it, 710 RPM. Power setting is idle, oil temperatures coming up, oil pressures in the green, cooler temperatures warming up, fuel temperatures fine. And that's a good start on the left, what we're looking for mainly is that the oil pressure comes into the green within, or outside of the red within 3 seconds, the oil pressure. And let's do the exact same for the right hand side. Master comes on, and I'm going to be watching the RPM gauge here. And there we have it, a good start. And she stabilizes at 710 RPM, and the oil pressure is out of the red within 3 seconds. So a good start on both sides. What we need to verify is 710 RPM on both sides. Fuel selectors can now go into the crossfeed position, which is here. Fuel selectors are both in the crossfeed. Auxiliary pumps can come into the on position. Pitot heat can come on. Just verify the annunciator. I'll keep that in the off position for now. Avionics master can come on. Okay, before taxi, what we need to do now also is the position lights in the on position, taxi lights. Fuel selectors at this point can go into the on position. Altimeters are set. Flaps can come into the takeoff position. That's over here. Transponder, our code today is 5645, and we can keep that in the standby for now. Alrighty, good to taxi. Just gonna have a quick look around the aircraft. So what we'll be doing today is taxiing towards the right, following this taxiway here, and then backtracking on the runway towards the numbers, and then turning around and facing in a northerly direction, taking off on runway 06, correction 07. So with that, parking brakes can come off, and I can add some power, and start taxiing into taxiway. I'm just going to test the brakes quickly. Brakes are good. And continue with our taxi. Very slick looking aircraft, this Diamond DA62. Just a nice smooth taxi. Thankfully there's no snow or ice on the runway. Shouldn't be a very long flight. Probably less than half an hour with this aircraft. Just going to follow that taxiway. Wind is definitely pushing on the tail. Which is making it slightly hard to steer and stay on the actual taxi. I'm going to slow her down a little bit just to make it around this turn. Quite bumpy. Alright, we're about to enter the runway, and at this point we can turn the transponder into the on mode. Just verify no traffic to the left, no traffic to the right. And just get us onto the runway. Really beautiful scenery out here. And there we have it on the runway. Just going to taxi to the numbers and then turn around and line up. Flight instruments look good. Initial climb is set up. Flight plan is set up. Trim is in the correct position for takeoff. Gosh, this wind. Can't take your eye off the outside for a second before the wind takes over. Once we stop, I'm going to run through the before takeoff check just one more time, and then we should be on our way. Like I said, we'll be flying in observer mode on VATSIM, so I'll tune to the uncontrolled frequency and just see if there's anyone in the area. Okay, there are the numbers. Just going to do a quick turn here. And there we go. Alright, so next thing we need to do is make sure, just run through idle, 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 fuel's on, trim is set to take off. Just move it slightly up, there we go, to take off. Auxiliary pumps, verify that they're on and on, correct. Rudder trim is set, flaps, check takeoff, that is set. Flight controls have been checked, power levers are still idle. Engine temperatures and pressures are in the green. Rotor switches are still on auto, just verify that. Auto and auto. Let's quickly run through the ECU test. So ECU, press and hold. Looks good. Press and hold. Fine. Pitot heat, I will turn that on. Fuel pumps can now go both into the on position. Landing lights can come on. Taxi light can come off. Strobe light can come on. Transponder can go into the alt mode. Alright, pretty much ready for takeoff. What I want to do now is just set the runway heading on the main PFD. And that should set us up for a good takeoff. Weather looks fine for the takeoff, so without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Just going to release the brake slowly, and let's just maintain that center line. Significant wind from the right, looking for 80 knots. Gosh, that wind really helps with the takeoff, but wow, that was wild. Okay, tap the brakes. Gear can come up. Just gonna recheck that heading. Just want to maintain that runway center line just for a little bit so we can gain some altitude. I'm actually going to go for VY at this point, so significant nose up position just so we can clear some of this terrain, maintaining the level. Just looking at that right screen, I just want to make sure that as many of those green and yellow patches, and especially the red patches, start decreasing before we commence our turn onto course. Just want to make sure we're as high as possible before we cross over those mountains. Alright, and at this point I'm going to raise the flaps. Safe altitude. Okay, autopilot, heading, and vertical speed. Take us onto the altitude. Vertical speed needs to be 1000 at this point. Let's come back on the power to 95%. Just still staying in this flat area before we start our turn. And I'm going to increase the vertical speed somewhat so we can climb a little bit quicker. Aircraft is nicely clean now. Really some beautiful scenery here up in Norway. Alright, at this point I'm going to start the turn to the north so we can begin the interception of the GPS track. Terrain is becoming clearer as we climb above, and then I'll set it to nav mode, set the autopilot to nav mode, and when we will intercept that magenta GPS track, and we'll be on our way to Echo November Oscar Victor. There's our altitude. Looking at the track, we should be clear of all the terrain. Not sure why I've lost connection. You can see the aircraft is fighting to actually going to increase the altitude by 1,000 foot. Just a 1 minute climb. It's super bumpy here where we are. And we're on the GPS track. 36 nautical miles to run. And into the clouds we go. It's been quite a common theme for this tour around the Nordics in the winter. So now for the approach to Echo November Oscar Victor, what I want to do is descend into one of these fjords and then do a VFR approach if possible into runway 06. We'll just have to check what the weather's like when we arrive. Just coming back on the power a little bit, down to 80%. Just want to maintain about 160 knots. Unfortunately, we're stuck in the clouds. Landing light I'll turn off at this stage. "30 nautical miles to run. About 9 minutes left. And there we go. Looks like we're out of the clouds for a bit. The weather up ahead looks good for our approach into Echo November Oscar Lima. Shouldn't have too much of an issue if it continues like this. You can see the beautiful fjords all around this area. On the approach, we're going to be looking for about 85 knots airspeed. Hopefully we can put her down nice and gently. Speaking of which, let me quickly tune to VATSIM. On to 2.8. Gosh, it's really bumpy here. This airspace is currently uncontrolled, so we'll just use the uncontrolled frequencies. Okay, we're almost ready to start the descent. And I'm going to significantly slow the aircraft down in the descent to allow us to have as much time to plan our approach into Echo November Oscar Victor. And basically, if I can just sit up a bit, that's the fjord we're going to want to head into. So at this point I'm going to turn off the, well, not even turn off the autopilot. I'm going to slow the aircraft down and I'm going to descend into that fjord. What I will do is move into heading mode, set us up for 06 and then start our descent down to 2,000 foot. Alt, vertical speed, and let's go. So to make sure that I am over this hill here, and then that should be fine for us. It's going to bring us back on the speed into this descent. It might be quite bumpy down there, but nothing that we shouldn't be able to handle. Runway elevation is 243 foot. It's going to slow us down even more. That was the throttle position warning. just to let me know that I'm not, in fact, at idle. Okay, I'm going to turn into this hill fjord, still well above the surrounding terrain. PFD, it looks good. And now, as we round that point, the airport is right over there. I'll increase the rates of descent at this point. And also try and slow her down a little bit. That's the gear warning. Just going to keep the nose into this valley. Just want to maintain clearance. Landing light can come on at this point.
Check gear. Check gear.
At this point I'm going to go down further to 1,000 foot. Turn the heading just to maintain this valley route.
Check gear.
And here come the bumps. Coming into this valley quite fast, but that's okay. We're still well below the VNE. And at this point I'm going to take over from the autopilot. I have control. And there we go. So I'm just going to level off at 2,000. Slow the aircraft down. And then set us up for a nice, easy approach into Echo November Oscar Victor. 6.2 nautical miles to run. We're about 1,500 foot above the airport elevation. Once we have the airport in sight, I'll get the aircraft set up for landing, which is gears, flaps. Landing lights are already on, so that's fine. Gonna set the heading bug to the runway heading, the 06. Just want to give us enough time to line up. At this point I'll drop the gear. And there's the runway up ahead. First stage of flaps. Looking for about 85 knots. Second stage of flaps. Airspeed decreasing with the increased drag. And flaps in landing position. Okay, gonna trim the aircraft for this speed. 85 knots is perfect. And I'm just gonna fly her in. Let's watch that airspeed. Thankfully not too bumpy here. Just watch that airspeed, don't want to drop below 80. Looking for 85 ideally. Looks like I have a tree or two to clear on the runway. Just gonna set the trim up a little bit. Just before we land, just gonna verify. Gears are down. Yep, gear is down. "85 knots is good." Just managing the power. Coming back on that airspeed a little bit. Just need to clear this tree. Some nice gentle flare. Finally, a nice, simple landing. Gonna run through the after landing checklist as soon as I've exited the runway. Gonna take this first taxiway. And we have our ground crew waiting for us right up in front. In fact, I'm just gonna actually get into the parking position. They're gonna direct us all the way in. And there we have it. Just gonna move slightly to the right as per our guidance. Okay, there we go. So after landing, pitot heat can come off. Flaps can come all the way up. Fuel pumps can come off right and left. De-icing systems, check that they're off. Taxi lights can come off. Landing lights off, strobe lights off, position lights off. Transponder can go back into standby. Parking brake can be set. Power levers 10%. ELT can be armed, which it is. Engine looks good. Avionics master comes off. Engine masters both come off. Avionics master comes off. Electric master comes off. And there we have it. Welcome to Ørsta-Volda Airport. As always, thank you for flying with me today. It was a pleasure having you on board and sharing the virtual skies with you. If you enjoy what I'm doing, please like and subscribe. It really goes a long way and I really appreciate it. I'd love to have you all the way along the Nordics tour with me today. If you have any suggestions for any aircraft I should fly next, please drop it in the comments below. But until next time, happy flying. Flyway J is out. Peace.